Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupa Kadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagnalalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Stram Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Kriya Panchakalpati Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Hare Krishna. Yes, so today is August 30, 2020, and it's the anniversary of the appearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Technically, we say appearance day rather than birthday, although sometimes Srila Prabhupada uses terms like birthday, like Krishna's birthday. Appearance indicating not not forced to take birth, like an ordinary conditioned soul, but co-creation with Krishna to come here for a particular spiritual mission. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, so these appearance days and disappearance days, they're special days. They're special days to hear about these special personalities for us. Like we are in North Florida, in Czech Republic, and here we are because of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. What? I never heard of them. So these are special days to learn about these personalities, hear about them, hear from them. On last night and 2 nights ago, we had evening programs on Srila Jiva Goswami, and deepening our understanding of the mission and life of Srila Jiva Goswami. Yesterday morning, Malini led a class and discussion on the appearance day of Vamanadev, the incarnation of Krishna, Vamanadev, who appeared millions of years ago. So Srila Bhaktivinoda appeared, maybe 200 years ago, and so there's many different ways we can hear from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, learn about him, and then share with others. And in that way, we participate in Srila Bhaktivinoda's parampara. We participate in Srila Bhaktivinoda's disciplic succession by hearing and then kirtan. Kirtan means share. It really means describing. It really means like to write, krit, kirtan, to write, to describe. It's commonly kirtan is we sing and dance and glorify the names of God. That's one form of kirtan. If we describe Bhaktivinoda Thakur's glories, that's kirtan. Kirtan, right? So here online, I see we have Kristen and Rohini Devi Dasi, Daru Brahma, Ladini Shakti, George, Kim, Drew, Eze, Malini, Narayan. And here, there's here with me in the room, the temple room, there's Damayanti Devi Dasi, Prampara Das, Ramachandra Das. I think Bhakti Brielle might be around somewhere. Perhaps Bhakti Heath is around, not sure. And so this morning before Japa period, we read the translations. We read the translation of some of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs, bhajans. He wrote dozens, maybe hundreds of songs. I know it. Mother Malini's ashram, there's this big blue book, all of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's bhajans. We read the translation, 24 stanzas of his bhajan, Gopinath. Touches the heart, moves the heart, makes me feel terrible and wretched in a way that moves me to want to surrender more to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's mission. It's not a grungy wretchedness, it's a spiritual wretchedness, and that's often one of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's moods. And we read a translation again before Japa, his bhajan, I think it's called Nam Kirtan. And he talks about Lord Gauranga is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And so for almost 10 years we've been doing these programs in this form. And it was several months ago was the anniversary of the disappearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda. And for the first time, at least for the first time in public, I read some excerpts from this book, which has dozens of direct excerpts from Srila Bhaktivinoda. It's a biography of Bhaktivinoda. And it seemed to be a real hit. So maybe this morning we'll read some of that. Most of it's translated from Bengali or Hindi, but of course he wrote Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya, and he published that in 1896 and sent it to different English-speaking universities. Particularly, he sent one to McGill University in Montreal, and that one, later when Prabhupada's one of his first centers was Montreal, maybe third center, yeah. So New York, San Francisco, Montreal, then Boston, then Santa Fe, New Mexico. And one of Prabhupada's disciples, Janardhan, while doing some research at the university, found this book. That was very special for Srila Prabhupada. And yeah. Even like this poem, Adore Yah, absolute ascension, thou hast proved in personal calamity, thou hast moved. That you're printing the book, Prabhupada's poem. That was lost. Prabhupada wrote that in 1936, I think, yeah. And then when Prabhupada was in England, again, if I get like one of his disciples was at a university library in England, and they found in the library like old copies of Bhaktisiddhanta's magazine, The Harmonist, and they found this poem by their spiritual master, Bhaktivinoda Swami. Prabhupada was so happy about that. And so Prabhupada, he gave a lot of meaning to that in a sense, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he, in a very tangible way, he started the spread of Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking world in 1896, the same year as Prabhupada's birth. So Prabhupada, he attaches meaning to that. He attaches meaning to that. And so, so maybe this morning we'll hear something from Srila Prabhupada, from Bhaktivinoda directly. And I thought we'll read maybe at least part of some transcript. There's also a recording, but I'm not set up to play the recording. This is a lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave in London, September 23rd, 1969, on the appearance day, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, again, in London, September 23rd, 1969. So let's hear a bit from Srila Prabhupada about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There are so many aspects of Bhaktivinoda's life that are awe-inspiring and devotion-inspiring. So Prabhupada says, so today is a very auspicious day, Thakur Bhaktivinoda's birthday. Here is the picture of Thakur Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda. He was one of the acharyas of this disciplic succession from Krishna. We have got a succession table from Krishna, genealogical table. There are two kinds of genealogical tables. One by the Semina, father, his son, like that. That is material genealogical table. And there is one spiritual genealogical table, disciplic succession. Just like Krishna, the original father, the supreme personality of Godhead, he spoke the Vedic knowledge to Brahma, Lord Brahma. He spoke to Narada. Narada spoke to Vyas. Vyas spoke to Madhvacharya. So in this disciplic succession, Lord Chaitanya, from Lord Chaitanya, the six Goswamis, and similarly coming down, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, then Gorakishore Das Babaji Maharaj, then my spiritual master, then we are next generation, my disciples. So there is a disciplic succession, and the acharyas, their authorities. Our process of knowledge is very simple. We take it from the authority. We don't speculate. Speculation will not help us to come to the real knowledge. Just like when we are in difficulty in legal implication, we go to some authority, lawyer. When we are diseased, we go to a physician, the authority. There is no use speculation. Suppose I am in difficulty in some legal implication. I simply speculate. I shall be free in this way and that way. That will not help. We have to go to the lawyer who knows things, and he gives us instruction that you do not do this, then you'll be free. Similarly, when we are diseased, if I speculate at home that my disease will be cured in this way and that way, no, that is useless. You go to an authorized physician, and he will give you a nice prescription and you'll be cured. That is the process of knowledge. But in the modern age, people think that I am free, I am independent, and I can make my own solution. That is rascaldom, that's not good. So Arjuna, when he was talking with Krishna as friend, but when he saw that there was no solution talking like this, he surrendered to Krishna. He said, Shishaste ham, aham, myself, I surrender unto you as your disciple. Shishaste ham sarimam tvam prapanam. Prapanam means surrender. So that is the Vedic injunction that if you want to know transcendental knowledge or science, transcendental means beyond the scope of your direct perception. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is an ideal guru. He was not a sannyasi, he was grahasta, householder, living with family, wife, children. Still, he was guru. So anyone can become guru, not that only a sannyasi can become guru. A householder also can become guru, provided he knows the science. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was talking with Ramananda Roy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a sannyasi. very highly born in Brahmin family, very learned scholar. So he was talking with Ramananda Roy, a Grahasta, governor of Madras. And he was questioning, and Ramananda Roy was answering. That means he was taking the part of guru, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was taking the part of a disciple. So he was hesitating, Ramananda Roy. He thought himself that I am a grahastha, not even a Brahmin. Besides that, I am dealing in material affairs. I am governor of politics. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a sannyasi, born of a high-class Brahmin family. So it does not look well that I shall teach him. So he was hesitating. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, oh, why are you hesitating? He said, Kiva Bripa Kiva Nyasi Sutra Kenenai. Yea, Krishna Tattva Veda Seti Guru Hai. He said, don't hesitate. Either one may become a Brahmin or one may become a Sudra. Kiva Vipra Kiva Sudra. Vipra means Brahmin and Sudra. Sudra is the fourth grade human being. Brahmin is the first grade. So Kiva Vipra Kiva Sudra. He may be a first grade human being or the lowest grade human being. Or he may become a sannyasi or grahastha. It does not matter. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna, he can become a guru. This is the verdict. So this Bhaktivinoda Thakur was grahastha, very responsible officer, magistrate. And he was so exalted that he would come from his office generally at 5 o'clock, then take his supper and immediately go to bed. Immediately, say at 7 o'clock in the evening, he goes to bed. And he wakes up at 12 o'clock. So suppose he goes to bed at 7 o'clock in the evening and wakes up at 12 o'clock at night. It is sufficient sleep, 5 hours. One should not sleep more than 5 to 6 hours. Minimize as far as possible. The Goswamis, they used to sleep not more than 1.5 hours, 2 hours. Sleeping is not a very important thing. Even big politicians, they used to sleep for 2 hours. So especially in spiritual life, they should minimize as far as possible. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending, minimize. Gradually it comes to nil. Raghunath Das Goswami, he was eating only a little piece of butter every alternate days, not daily. So this Bhaktivinoda Thakur, regularly he was coming from his office, and after taking his supper, immediately he goes to bed and wake up at 12 o'clock, and he used to write books. He left behind him about 100 books, and he excavated the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, organized how to develop that birth site, Mayapur. He had so many business. He used to go to preach about Chaitanya's philosophy. He used to sell books to foreign countries. In 1896, he attempted to sell Life and Precepts of Chaitanya in the McGill University in Montreal. So he was busy, acharya. So one has to adjust things. Not that because I am grahastha, householder, I cannot become a preacher. It is the business. It is the business of the sannyasi or brahmachari. No, it is the business of everyone. The whole world is suffering for want of knowledge. The present civilization is animal civilization. They do not know anything beyond eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That's all. This is animal civilization. Animal does not know beyond these 4 principles of life: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That's all. No, human life is meant for something else. What I am, what is God, what is my relationship with God, what is this material world, why I am here, where I have to go next. So many things one has to learn. Aptato Brahma Jigyasa. This is human life. Not that eat and sleep and have sex life and die someday like cats and dogs. Therefore, there is need of acharyas, teachers, for propagating spiritual knowledge. Krishna consciousness, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was, although he was a grahastha, householder, a government officer, magistrate, but he was acharya. So from his dealings, from his life, we should learn how one can become a preacher in any stage of life. It doesn't matter what he is. There was one incident, it's very interesting. When he was magistrate in Jagannath Puri, the system is, Jagannath Temple is a very big establishment. In the temple, 56 times daily, bhoga is offered. And if you'll find in the temple always at least 500 to 1,000 people gather. And they come from outside and prasad is ready. And if you go and ask in the Jagannath temple that we are 100 men come from outside, we want prasad. Yes, immediately ready. So it is a huge temple. This is one temple, but there are many other thousands of temples in India where prasad is distributed. Now it is minimized by our present government. They think that it is unnecessary expenditure. They are minimizing, but not unnecessary expenditure. They do not understand. Formerly in India, there was no necessity of hotel. Anyone goes anywhere, even in a village, he goes to a temple, prasad is ready. There is no need of going to a hotel. You pay or don't pay. If you say that I want little prasad, yes, take it. That is the system still. There is the Natadvar temple in Rajasthan. You pay 2 annas only. 2 annas means 1 cent. You get sumptuous prasad for 2 men, all very nice prasad still. So prasad distribution in temple is long-standing usage. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the Jagannath temple is managed by a body, and it is the custom that the local magistrate of the district, he becomes the president or manager. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was manager in that sense because he was magistrate. The managing committee was being presided by him, so there was a complaint. In Orissa, this Jagannath temple is situated in Orissa. Utkala, this state was originally belonging to Dhruva Maharaj. His son's name was Utkala, Maharaj Utkala. Anyway, so this Utkala, there was a pseudo-yogi. He declared himself that, just like you'll find nowadays also, there are so many rascals declaring that I am incarnation of God. And they know some mystic power, play some jugglery, and foolish people take them, oh, he's God. So there appeared one such pseudo-god, Vishnu, in a village in Orissa. And he was dancing rasa dance. And foolish people were sending their daughters and wives to dance with him. You see, there were so many. Not only that, people are so foolish, they do not know. They want to be cheated, and these cheaters come. He declared that I am God, I am Vishnu. So there were sane men also. They took objection. What is this nonsense? This man is dancing with ladies and girls. So they filed a complaint. At that time, it was British rule. They complained to the governor or the commissioner, very high officer. The commissioner knew that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his name was Kedranath Dat, his household name. So the commissioner of the division, he knew that Kedranath Dat is a religious man and he's magistrate in charge. So he handed over the case for inquiry. What is this complaint? You please inquire and do the needful. So he was a pure devotee, and he understood that this rascal is a bogus man cheating people. I must inquire. So he went to the village in plain dress with some constables, police constables. They were also in plain dress, and as soon as he approached that rascal yogi, he said, oh, you are Kedranath Dat. So very nice. I shall make you king of India. Please don't try to bother me. Because he could know that he has come to inquire about my Ras Leela. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur first of all said, sir, you are such a great yogi. Why are you in the village? Why don't you go to Jagannath Puri? There is temple and Lord Jagannath is there. Better you go there and see the Lord and be happy. Why you are in this village? So then the pseudo-yogi replies, oh, Jagannath, that is made of wood. I am personally the Supreme Lord. That is made of wood. So that wasn't a very good thing to say to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It wasn't a very intelligent thing to say to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Okay. Oh, then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was devotee, he became fire. And then there's laughter. He became fire. He was insulting. Arche Shiladir Guru Shu Naramati. According to Shastra, someone thinks, just like here is deity, if someone thinks, oh, it is made of stone, it is stone to the eyes of the non-devotee, but it is personally supreme personality of Godhead to the devotees. It requires the eyes to see. So devotee sees in a different angle of vision. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he entered Jagannath temple, immediately he fainted. Oh, here is my Lord. And the non-devotee is seeing, it is wood, a lump of wood. Therefore, to the non-devotee, he remains always as wood. But to the devotee, he speaks. That is the difference. Primanjana charita bhakti vilochanena. If God is everything, why wood? Through wood and stone, God cannot manifest. If God is everything, according to Mayavad philosophy, that's a fact. God, omnipotent. He can express himself even through wood and stone. That is God's omnipotency. That is called omnipotency. Not that God is unable to express himself through wood and stone. Then how he's omnipotent? Omnipotent means his potency can be expressed through anything. Because anything, everything is the expansion of God's energy. Parasya Brahmana Shakti Statedam Akilam Jagat. The whole world is manifestation of different energies of God. Therefore, just like through the energy of electricity, the electric powerhouse, although far, far away from this place, was expressing. There is electricity through this glass, through these wires. The power can be expressed. There is a process. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur became very much, because a devotee cannot tolerate blaspheming another devotee or God. So as soon as he said that, why I shall go to Jagannath Puri to see the wooden Jagannath, I am personally Vishnu. Bhaktivinoda Thakur immediately ordered his constables, arrest him, arrest this rascal. So he was arrested, and when he was arrested, he had some yogic mystic power. All the constables, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and his family members became affected with high fever, 105 degrees fever. So when he came back, his wife became very much disturbed that you arrested Vishnu and we're all going to die. We have now high fever. Bhaktivinoda Thakur replied, yes, let us all die, but this rascal must be punished. This is the view of pure devotee. So he was put into the custody and there was a date fixed for his trial. And all these days, Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself and his family especially, they were suffering from high fever. Maybe that yogi was planning to kill the whole family, but it was going on as fever. So on the trial day, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Kedranath Dat, when he came to the bench, the man was presented, the so-called yogi, and he had big, big hairs. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur ordered that bring one barber and cut his hair. So no barber dared. The barbers thought, oh, he's a Lord Vishnu. If I offend, as he's suffering from fever, so I shall also die. So Bhaktivinoda ordered that, give me the scissors, I'll cut. So he cut his hairs and ordered him to be put into jail for 6 months. And in the jail, that Vishnu incarnation managed to take some poison and he died. So this is one of the incidents. There are many incidences. He was a very strong man. He punished many pandas in the tirthas who exploit visitors. So this is the position of devotee. In spite of his becoming a responsible magistrate, a householder, still he was acharya. So we have to follow the acharyas. If we are at all interested in spiritual science, then we must follow the Vedic instruction. We must approach. You cannot have spiritual knowledge simply by speculating. Impossible. Simply waste of time. Okay, I'll pause there. I thought maybe to the lecture, and then there's questions and answers with Prabhupada and devotees and guests about Bhaktivinoda. Encourage everyone to take special time today to continue to absorb pastimes and teachings of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But I'll read a few excerpts from this book here. This book is called Hindu Encounter with Modernity. It's by a devotee named Shukavak N. Das. The subtitle is Kedrinath Das, Bhaktivinoda, Vaishnav theologian. I'll say, it's not a hagiography. Hagiography means a biography that's written by someone who has full conviction that the person they're writing about is a saint. And so there are biographies like that of Bhaktivinoda. For example, there's the seventh Goswami. The seventh Goswami by, I'm forgetting his name. He used to be in Tallahassee. Now he's in England. I think you might remember his name. And so, right now, I don't know Shukavak personally, but he decided, and we can all have our opinions about it. He decided to write a biography from let's call it, I'm going to put in quotes, an objective scholarly point of view. But, yes, but Shukavak is a devotee, but he thought like it'll be a nice service to the world because certain people like in academic communities will enter into it more if it's not a hagiography. It's a very well researched and written book. Okay, I'm just saying like it's coming from a point of view. You know, when I put objective scholarly in quotes, that's important. That's important to realize because you know, in the name of like scholarship and university learning, academia, the idea is, oh well, if we're like practicing it, then we won't have an objective view. Okay. So there's many shortcomings, just like Krishna says to Bhagavat, to Arjuna. He said to Arjuna, I'm speaking this to you because you are my devotee. It's like we give, Prabhupada gives the example, just like, okay, so if we want to know the Vedas say, okay, you want to understand the Vedas? The Vedas say, here's how you can understand. Enter into us with a spirit of devotion. And so they go, okay, well, we're not going to enter, no, we want to understand you, so we're not going to enter into devotion. So then just like a doctor is giving a prescription and say, it works, take it 3 times a day this way. Well, I'll do it my own way. Well, you're not going to get the effect. So if we reject the Veda's own way to say, here's how to know me, we're not going to know the Vedas. We won't get the secret. Even one's a great scholar without being a bhakta, one will not enter into the open mysteries of the Vedas. So in this book, Shukavak, he does have direct quotes from Bhaktivinoda, and several months ago, we read some of them. We might repeat a bit here. So there's many, actually right towards the end, there's like 25-page in English. It's Bhaktivinoda Thakura, he wrote an essay on the Bhagavatam, which he gave as a speech at some big conference in India. I forget the year, maybe 1880s or something like that. But he did that in English. Most of his writings are not in English. Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya, that's English. And he wrote this, he gave a speech in English, and that's in here. It's amazing. Maybe next year we'll get to that, or Bhaktivinoda's appearance day or something. Okay, so here's an excerpt from Bhaktivinoda, from his book called The Bhagavat, Its Philosophy, Ethics, and Theology. That's a book by Kedrinath Das, Bhaktivinoda. So he says, you must yourself knock at the door of the inexhaustible store of truth from which the former ages drew their wealth. Go up to the fountainhead of truth, where no pilgrim meets with disappointment of any kind. Vyasa did it and obtained what he wanted. We have been advised to do so. Liberty then is the principle, which we must consider as the most valuable gift of God. We must not allow ourselves to be led by those who lived and thought before us. We must think for ourselves and try to get further truths which are still undiscovered. In the Bhagavad, we have been advised to take the spirit of the Shastras and not the words. The Bhagavad is, therefore, a religion of liberty, unmixed truth, and absolute love. Now, it's important to keep in mind, Bhaktivinoda, he's not writing for us. Also, there are some excerpts here, which we read last time, which are very colorful. And they're not Vaishnava. He went through a transformation. He was like a young intellectual in Bengal, trained by the British. And he went through a period where maybe he was interested in the Upanishads or some impersonal literature. But there's some quotes here where he was describing how him and his friends, they rejected the Bhagavatam as fairy stories. They rejected the Bhagavatam. And then he went through a transformation. He somehow it wasn't easy, like kind of like a manuscript of Chaitanya Charitamrita came into him. He read it, and his transformation is amazing. But he describes his mentalities before his transformation, and he had quite a condescending, critical view on like Vaishnavism and things like that. So okay. So again, that's why we use the term Prabhupada's our current link. Right? We understand Bhaktivinoda through Prabhupada. We understand Jiva Goswami through Srila Prabhupada. We understand Narahari Sarkar through Srila Prabhupada. We understand Vyasadeva through Srila Prabhupada. Okay. Once in a while, on their appearance and disappearance days, we might hear something directly from them. Okay, there could be some of that. And when we do that, let's be conscious to process it through our current link, Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so Bhaktivinoda, he's talking about his maternal grandfather. As Bernagar was famous within Bengal as a wealthy village, so my maternal grandfather, Sri Ishwar Chandra Mustaupi, was famous as a prosperous landowner. His wealth and liberal disposition were known throughout the region, and people used to come from all over the countryside to see his famous palace. If anyone was in need, they could go to the home of Mustaupi Mahashai and get whatever they needed without any difficulty. Okay. Bhaktivinoda continues. I was 11 years old when my father passed away, and I was forced to become independent. I constantly worried, what would become of me? I saw only darkness. There were no blood relatives to look after me. I was helpless and gradually sinking lower. At school, I became listless. I would even take castor oil in order to avoid attendance. Repeatedly, my old fever returned. He suffered from malaria. The only redeeming feature of this period was that I avoided bad company. I thought many things over and tried to put my thoughts into poetry. At that time, I wrote the Ulachandi Mahatmya, which is now unfortunately lost. So he wrote apparently a poetry book at 11 years old. Yes. Okay. Then, so he continues to say, in Puri, means Jagannath Puri, I made a lot of devotional advancement. I was becoming detached from worldly life, and I no longer believed that material progress produced anything of lasting value. I spent my time in great happiness, seeing the festivals, acquiring knowledge, and cultivating devotion. There is no doubt that Sri Purushottama Kshetra Puri is directly Vaikuntha itself. At this time, I gave up all karmakanda practices and depended solely on Vaishnav Prasad. This next one is like a point of interest. This is a letter from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Okay, because Bhaktivinoda sent Life and Precepts to well-known scholars and writers around the world. So Ralph Waldo Emerson responded, "Dear sir, I have received with pleasure the book." Oh, so he sent Emerson a different book. This is from the 1880s. "I have received with pleasure the book you so kindly sent me. I am sorry that I do not know the language and cannot read it, and can only send my thanks." Okay. Then this is Bhaktivinoda's comment on the book, Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya. He says, "The object of this little book is to bring the holy life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his precepts to the notice of the educated and the religious people. Most of the books treating these subjects have hitherto been printed in Bengali characters. Hence, the life and precepts of Chaitanya have scarcely passed beyond the boundaries of Bengal. This book has therefore been printed in Sanskrit type for circulation all over India. Our educated brethren of Europe and America have taken of late to the study of the Sanskrit language, and it is our belief that this brochure will go to their hands in a very short time. With a view to help our English-knowing readers in going through the book, we have here summarized in English the contents of the work." So that's from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Life and Precepts. Srila Prabhupada's introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam is basically based on Bhaktivinoda's book, Sri Chaitanya's Life and Precepts. Prabhupada's introduction to Bhagavatam. Yes. Let's see. So Bhaktivinoda, he writes, "The name of Hari is not born in this material world. A soul who is an infinitesimal part of the infinite is only eligible to pronounce the name of God when he lives in his own pure transcendental body. Nobody of this world who lies in the bondage of illusion is able to utter the pure name. But when the real self works through the grace of the Ladini Sakti, it is then that the real name of God appears. With the appearance of the divine name, the pure name most kindly descends on the mind of the devotee and begins to dance on his tongue, sanctified by devotion. The name is not just a combination of syllables. Only when it dances on the material tongue does it assume the shape of letters. This is the mystery of the name." Okay. We'll read one more and see then if there's any sharing or questions. So this is from, again, the same book we mentioned earlier, the Bhagavat. It's Philosophy, Ethics, and Theology by Kedunatha Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He writes, "The Bhagavat does not allow its followers to ask anything from God except eternal love towards him. The kingdom of the world, the beauties of the local heavens, and the sovereignty over the material world are never the subjects of Vaishnava prayer. The Vaishnava meekly and humbly says, 'Father, Master, God, friend, and husband of my soul, I have called you my God. Let my soul be wrapped up in admiration at your greatness. I have addressed you as my master. Let my soul be strongly devoted to your service. I have called you my friend. Let my soul be in reverential love towards you and not in dread or fear. I have called you my husband. Let my spiritual nature be in eternal union with you, forever loving and never dreading or feeling disgust. Father, Father, let me have strength enough to go up to you as the consort of my soul, so that we may be one in eternal love.'" Hare Krishna.
Hey, Bo.
Hare
Hey,
Krishna.
Bo. Just one little point. It was actually Rupa Vilas Das in Tallahassee who wrote that other book.
Thank you, Dhira Brahma Prabhu. Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, Rupa Vilas Das. Yeah, he also wrote Araya Vishnu, which is a biography of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, and he wrote the seventh Goswami. Just like there are the six Goswamis, we're hearing a lot about them these days, the six Goswamis. And then, of course, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he appeared like hundreds of years after the six Goswamis. And he was, okay, so, and he was a magistrate, he worked for the government. Of course, that's a whole area of his life. He would, you know, he would do, you know, he would do like a full week's of work in a few hours, work in a few hours, everything at the top level. And he had 13 children, but his Vaishnava associates would refer to him as the seventh Goswami. Okay. So Goswami, it's not intrinsically about how many children someone has or whether they're wearing loincloths or a certain tie. It's not intrinsically about that. So his Vaishnava associates referred to him as the seventh Goswami. Yes, Rupa Vilas Das. I remember back when I was going to Tallahassee weekly for some period, year and a half, 2 years, for my PhD classes back in the mid to late 90s. And I would stay at the Tallahassee Temple. Yes. And if I remember correctly, that's, yeah. And Rupa Vilas would sometimes come and give classes with him. Thank you, Dhira, for that point of information. Any other comments or questions?
I have a question.
Damayanti.
So the pseudo yogi,
Yeah.
he did some sort of like, well, Prabhupada called it mystic powers.
Yeah.
But could that also be considered our black magic?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's another name for the same energies we're talking about.
Yeah. And
So,
Krishna could have arranged that it didn't affect Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his family and
Krishna could have arranged that.
yes, but he sanctified the effect of it.
Yeah.
Coming to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Bhaktivinoda wasn't too distressed about it.
Right. He was like, okay, let us die. He was like, okay. He was like, you let us die, let our children die. He needs to be punished. Yeah. So he had no material distress of that.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the devotional response to black magic or spiritual attacks, because I guess they do happen. They do happen.
There are real powers. Yeah.
There are things even to this day.
Yeah.
It happens. And the devotional response is just to receive it as, like, if you experience the effect of an attack, to receive it as an opportunity or a blessing or just total trust in what's happening. It's just simple. You don't. The devotional mood is not to fight back.
Devotional mood is to be devotional.
Yeah, just use it in service.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, to use it in service. Yeah, whatever devotional service looks like. And so it means like, I'm going to continue to chant Hare Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
We know that's part of our devotional service.
We don't have to do some separate counter.
Right. Yeah, but we're not hearing that Bhaktivinoda did some separate thing to counter, so, we, maybe you're familiar of Srila Prabhupada at Keatonhurst. Familiar with that one? Yeah.
With the ghosts?
Yeah.
It was like, it seems that it wasn't an occasional interaction topic with ghosts.
Yeah.
If that's how he would get the cheap houses in here.
That I haven't heard, but it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Because like you'd see that people wouldn't purchase houses because there's ghosts. Okay, not like we don't believe in ghosts, but we got chanting Hare Krishna, so that it makes sense. And yeah, so Tittenhurst, it was a big mansion owned by John Lennon, Yoko Ono. Okay, and so in what, 69, Prabhupada, along with some disciples, John Lennon offered to host them while they were kind of fixing up, I guess, a bury place. The devotees, that's what they arranged. They were staying at John Lennon's place. The devotees would do some service for John Lennon's place. Anyhow, Prabhupada would take a morning walk, japa, and there was this one kind of like elderly gardener. I think he was the gardener for the place with his wife. And in the biographies described, Prabhupada had a special affectionate relationship with him because they were about the same age, as opposed to like the young disciples in their 20s, or John and Yoko, the musicians. So yeah, there's descriptions like the gardener was talking about his teeth, and Prabhupada very proudly said, "I still have all my teeth, even at my age. I'm in my 70s, and my teeth are in good condition." So they had like a buddy relationship. And anyhow, but the gardener's the gardener's place, there was said it had a ghost, and there was just like all sorts of non-rational things happening, creaking, and furniture moving, like that. And yes, and so and they said they tried everything. So Prabhupada said, "Okay, let us take care of this." And Prabhupada arranged 24-hour kirtan, just 24-hour kirtan, and ghost was gone. So devotee keeps chanting Hare Krishna. Yeah, keeps chanting Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
And there it says too that when they, well, I mean, in the other, I think in the seventh Goswami,
Yeah,
it says that when he, like, it didn't here say that when they cut his hair off, that the guy's mystic powers left, right? Because that's these mystic
that's where they live.
Babaji, whatever they are, that's where they get their powers from, is their hair.
Like Samson.
Yeah.
Like the biblical story of Samson.
Yeah.
So it's a real thing. It's a real thing. Many yogis, they hold their mystic powers in their hair. All those things have Vedic origins. It's described that there are there's certain places in India where women mystic yoginis, they're able to take a big tree branch and fly on it wherever they want. So it's not just fairy tales about flying on a broomstick, or Samson's hair, like that.
Yeah, I know in Vancouver there was one house that was, I don't know why it was a devotee that was owned by the temple. I don't know why there were still ghosts in there, but they would say that there was ghosts.
Yeah.
And when I moved in there, I noticed that I was having weird dreams and stuff like that. And so yeah, I just started putting on kirtan at night. And there's sometimes when I would leave the window open, I'd have weird dreams. And then when I would turn kirtan on, Prabhupada chanting, I never had bad dreams. And it's like I've seen this like probably at least 24 times, that this happened. I have weird dreams, having them maybe every night for a few nights, and then I just put the kirtan on, it just goes away.
The results are clear.
Yeah, science, my own little scientific experiments.
Yeah, that's the power of transcendental sound vibration.
Shared that I've experienced that too. It helps me to don't leave, so it's more proof. And whatever you were describing about the Prabhupada's poem being lost, or Bhaktivinoda Thakura's book being found in Montreal, kind of like discovery, it made me think of Bhaktivinoda discovering the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, unearthing these these places, these holy places that have been lost, and because I can have doubts about that, like, okay, is that what is that? Just put up doubts about it. But then to hear, like Prabhupada, his poem that was lost, that the devotee found it.
Yes,
It's closer, it's real. It's like the same kind of experience, like this sacred thing that was lost or not known about, was discovered.
Yes, same principle.
So it builds, faith in that way. And so I wondered about Bhaktivinoda Thakura, if you would, my understanding is that he rejuvenated the Lord Chaitanya's movement, that it was kind of like he was like you were describing there. He was saying earlier in his life he was condescending and looking down upon Vaishnavism, and it had a certain reputation in India as corrupt or
Like the pseudo yogi, it was a dangerous sex cult. It was seen that way.
At the same time, he had a spiritual master. Talking about Swamiji, so there was some authentic Vaishnavism happening. And I know that Bhaktivinoda, he was really established his main Namahat. So it's like home programs. And so it wasn't almost like big temples like Bhaktisiddhanta established. Including temples.
Yeah.
So that was like an organization, like a solid, like spiritual organization. And with Bhaktivinoda is more loose and just home temples.
Practice in your home. Have programs of 10 or 12 people.
And then also, so like he discovered with the help of Jagannath Das Babaji, the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mayapur, right?
Yes.
And so at that time, I think my understanding is that Navadvip was a location in Navadvip that was accepted.
Yeah.
So there's other perspectives of like what's, even in Lord Bhaktivinoda, we can kind of go back. It's not just a one clear line. There's different perspectives about things and about Vaishnavism. Now we have schisms and different things with Vaishnavism. There's always been differing kinds. There's never been like clear cuts. One organization or whatever throughout time. But I wonder if you would speak about what was going on with Vaishnavism, what did it look like, and maybe even like this, like what was happening with Navadvip was accepted as the birthplace. Who were those devotees that were accepting Navadvip? And like, you could I'm wanting more context about what was happening during that time.
More context. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. What I know about Bhaktivinoda Thakur is what I hear from Srila Prabhupada, and I have read two biographies and like that. And okay. So I appreciate what you're expressing and what you're inviting me to talk about from Prabhu. So it relates to this yogi mystic power story. So that was just what you said in a few minutes there. You really highlight a few main themes of Bhaktivinoda's appearance and mission. And we heard like his, writing his bhajans and his books, and then exposing the corruption in the name of Vaishnavism. Like so, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and then followed by Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur really was the beginning of standing strong for the integrity of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, for the integrity of Chaitanyite Vaishnavism coming through the 6 Goswamis. Because in just a few generations after the Goswamis, maybe even during the Goswamis' generation, but within a few generations after Goswamis, then in the name of Gaudiya Vaishnavism was all this corruption. We hear like this pseudo yogi, he was a Vaishnava doing the rasa dance. Right? Really degraded, very degraded, wicked stuff. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur took a strong stand. Prabhupada, you see, Prabhupada has it memorized. He sometimes will just recite with 13 deviant sects of Sahajiya Vaishnavism. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur stood, he was like a warrior. You can see here, he was ready to die. He was on the battlefield, ready to die against the corruption in the name of Vaishnava, in the name of Vaishnava, in the name of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, in the name of Lord Chaitanya, all this corruption. So that was intolerable for him. So he really restored the integrity. Now, the true thing, it's never completely lost. Just like Krishna says to Arjuna, in the beginning of the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, this succession was lost. It's not that there's no Vaishnava. So at any period, it's never that the pure thing is completely lost. It'd be, a few Vaishnavas here and there in their caves or in their living rooms doing the real thing, but more or less it's dormant. So Bhaktivinoda, he stood strong against corruption. We see one example here. So also my understanding of Navadvip, from what I've read, heard from Prabhupada, and that it was corruption in a similar but slightly different form. That basically, in the name of getting tourists to give them money, different groups would claim this is the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. It happens to be in my front yard, and if you just for the bargain rate of 10 rupees, you can So for material business concerns, different groups were claiming that they had they on the plot of land that they owned happened to be the real birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, just for economic concerns.
Turf wars going and stuff like that.
Turf wars, exactly. So that just it's another form, another pastime where Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as you said, with the support of his guru Jagannath Das Babaji, and it's worthy to note, Jagannath Das Babaji never conducted a formal ceremony of initiation for Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It was someone else did conduct a formal ceremony, and nothing against that Vaishnava, but Prabhupada never mentions him once. Okay, but because it's not anything against that Vaishnava, but we've just prominent for Bhaktivinoda was Jagannath Das Babaji. And so probably most of you know the story. So Jagannath Das Babaji was like 120 years old. Bhaktivinoda's carrying him in a basket to a place where he was thinking he's knowing is the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. And for confirmation, he carries Jagannath Das Babaji in a basket. He's 120 years old. And when they arrive at the place, Jagannath Das Babaji jumps out of the basket and Haribo, Haribo, Gornitai, like that. So that was confirmation. And then also Parampara, thanks for sharing. So just like what we're doing here, home programs, right? You host it in your house. That's Bhaktivinoda, that's called the Nam Hat. Actually, Hat means marketplace. And Nam means marketplace of the holy name. And he derives a whole system of different roles in the marketplace. There's the seller, there's the producer. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur established what's called the Nam Hat program. And he identified his own role in the marketplace of the holy name as the street sweeper. He was not the president of the organization. He identified his role as the street sweeper, meaning I'm going to keep it clean. I'm going to keep this clean. Okay, we're not going to have any pseudo yogis. We're not going to have any economic motivations like that. We're not going to have any false rasa lila. His role is the street sweeper. So yeah. So we could, like Lord Chaitanya himself did not establish any temples. His followers, the 6 Goswamis, all established temples. So Srila Prabhupada established many temples and home programs. So it's both part. They're both part of Prabhupada's movement, Bhaktivinoda's movement, and Lord Chaitanya's movement. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was the magistrate of this amazing temple, Jagannath Puri. And and right, so he was like responsible for serving prasad to hundreds of thousands of people per day. In fact, 56 offerings per day. And he established home program. You don't need to come to the temple. And they're like, oh, you're not coming to the temple, you're in Maya. We hear these things. So chant in your home. And he developed a very scientific system. Chant in your home and have gatherings at your home. When the gatherings are getting like too big for a home program, then branch off. And then some who are senior, you start having programs in your home with 10, 15, 20 people, and then branch off like that. So what's that?
Who suggested branching off?
Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Yeah, it was quite
Bhakti Vriksha, is that the same program?
same idea.
But did Srila Prabhupada?
Completely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So, okay. Srila Prabhupada, well, yeah, I mean, he's giving us Bhaktivinoda Thakur's mood. Prabhupada wanted that. Prabhupada, he sometimes he'll say that, like, he established the temples, and sometimes he'll say that 50% of his mission is unfinished, and that relates to Varnashram, which means, like, Prabhupada understood, like, it's not like, oh, to participate, you need to join the temple. That was never Prabhupada's view. Prabhupada went with what Krishna gave him. Prabhupada, right? So, like, even at the start, even okay, like when Prabhupada first, of course, he started in Butler, Pennsylvania. Very nice programs. He spoke at Slippery Rock College outside of Pittsburgh. Nice programs, but he understood after a few weeks, okay, this was a nice chapter, but this isn't like the fire of the mission like that. And then he made his way through Philadelphia and came to New York. He was on the Upper East Side, staying with Dr. Mishra. And then he was giving programs, but he needed to be a little restrained because Dr. Mishra was watching what he says. And so, but he was giving, there was like affluent New Yorkers, who were into yoga, maybe getting into vegetarianism like that. Okay, so like Prabhupada was ready. Let's say if some of them took like chanting Hare Krishna 16 rounds per day, Lord Chaitanya's mission, then yeah, so let's do home programs. Let's do home programs. These are people with homes. Right? So then, but then and that was a nice chapter. I mean, very austere chapter for Prabhupada if you read his biography, but okay. So then he left. So he left and he made his way to the Lower East Side, and that's where at one point he was his one housemate was an acid head who had a violent acid trip. And, so very austere. But then he started attracting followers from amongst people who did not have homes, and so it would be like. So some of his followers, they got the storefront on 2nd Avenue. And the thing was, like, after your LSD trip, the Swami's place is a great place to crash. So like there was no home program facility. So like that became the temple. So it's the temple model. So but Prabhupada so much encouraged home programs, but basically, till he left in 77, mainly he established the temples. And he so much wanted Namaha Bhakti Vriksha as part of like wherever you're at. He quotes those verses again and again. Wherever you're at, whatever you do, wherever you meet, share Krishna consciousness. So, yeah.
Srila Bhakti, Srila Prabhupada. I think I heard quotes of him saying temples are not as important as book distribution. So that was his real focus.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Prabhupada will often quote. So Prabhupada didn't have, let's call it the Bapu Jivana, Bapu association with Bhaktisiddhanta, not very much. But during one of Prabhupada's association with Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktisiddhanta, because Bhaktisiddhanta had just recently opened a big Gaudiya Mat temple in Calcutta. I think it's the headquarters. It's probably still there. And Bhaktisiddhanta was feeling, I think it's in a section called Bhag Bizarre. And Bhaktisiddhanta was feeling disgusted already. He's saying like, they had barely opened the temple, and many of his leaders were fighting who's going to have which room, who's going to get the most important room and position. So Bhaktisiddhanta shared with Abhay Charan Aravinda at the time. He shared with them. He shared that there's going to be fire in this month, right? He could see that there were just all these mundane politics, and it was getting ugly and vicious. And then Bhaktisiddhanta, he shared, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially he said, yeah, I'm thinking it's better to sell all this marble, fancy marble, sell all this marble, print books, sell all the marble, print books. That became the Brihat Mridanga. With this term, we say Brihat Mridanga ki jai. So we know the Mridanga. So Brihat means great. So the idea with the Mridanga, maybe you can hear through the whole house, or maybe through a city block or two. But Prabhupada, he said this term Brihat Mridanga comes from Bhaktisiddhanta. That the Brihat Mridanga is the printing press. And with the printing press, the Mridangas heard, the Kirtans heard all around the world. And so Bhaktisiddhanta said to Prabhupada, if you ever get money, print books. Because he was disgusted with all this marble stuff. Now, he wasn't saying don't open temples, but the priority, books. Yes, the books are more important than the temples. The books are more important than the temples. And that's why Prabhupada's actual books, Prabhupada's authentic books, they are more important than the temples. And so clearly Prabhupada established so many wonderful temples. And it's such a part of his mission. I'll say unequivocally, without any qualification, that Prabhupada would agree. His books are more important than any stone or marble temples. That's and that Prabhupada. In fact, Prabhupada said that as far as Vaishnavism, he got everything from his biological father, Gaur Mohan De. He got everything from his biological father, except for book publishing and book distribution. That he got from Bhaktisiddhanta. Of course, he got everything from Bhaktisiddhanta. But his father, Gaur Mohan De, was a pure devotee. And so Prabhupada's father was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srimad Bhagavatam and chanting kirtan and deity worship. But as far as publish books and distribute them to spread the movement, he said that he distinctively got from his spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta. Bhaktisiddhanta said, yeah, there's already a fire in this month. And so if you ever get money, print books. Yeah.
Sorry, I have another question.
Sure.
So, did Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur have any influence over Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's stance on temples or books? Or did Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur have any vision for printing and distributing books? Or like, he did a little.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah, so much. Yeah. Actually, yesterday, in talking a bit about Jiva Goswami, we talked about the first Gaudiya Vaishnava book distribution party, and it was inspired by Jiva Goswami with I probably won't remember all the name, but Shyamananda and Rasikananda, and so there were books that it looks like they were going to be lost or destroyed, and a group of devotees headed by Jiva Goswami saved the manuscripts and then distributed them, around India. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he at a time when India was subjugated by the British, India was like a second-class country, an inferior country. Bhaktivinoda's vision was, yes, that people will come from England, Russia, France, Germany, United States, and they're going to all come to Mayapur and chant and dance Hare Krishna. And it's like, what? You got this primitive culture that's worthy only of being destroyed, really. And Bhaktivinoda believed that in his youth. He at least in his pastime, that like, yeah, the British Christian culture is far superior to this. And then he had his transformation. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur in 1896, he published Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya in English and sent it to McGill University and other places. So yeah, and he predicted there will soon appear someone who will take Lord Chaitanya, the Sankirtan movement, to the English-speaking countries, Western-speaking countries. Yeah, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he managed a temple. He didn't establish temples, but book publishing was a big part of his mission, and so he certainly gave that. He wrote a lot. He wrote so many bhajans. He wrote, I think he even in what we just read, Prabhupada said he wrote like 100 books. No, he was prolific. Yeah, he would. Prabhupada said he would get home at 7 o'clock. He would take rest for a few hours, get up at midnight, and write books and songs. He was prolific. He was prolifically in many languages, definitely. So that's part of his mission, big time. See, he had so many parts of his mission.
But he knew it wasn't him. He said soon someone will. He had a prediction that soon someone would appear, and he didn't say it is Bhaktisiddhanta. He left it to the future.
Right, and it's clear that it was Srila Prabhupada.
Yes.
Yeah, right. He said as soon someone will appear was going to take this to the West.
And he didn't say it is my son Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He didn't have that. He was soon.
Yeah,
Thereafter.
right. So
It's authoritative speech.
yes.
Say that.
And then if we look in earlier Vaishnav teachings, I'm forgetting the names, maybe it was Lokanath Das Thakur, goes back to like the 1600s, who also had some writing where he used the term Senapati, which means a general of the Sankirtan army will appear to spread this around the world. Yeah, because there's a well-known verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prativeti Achiyata Nagarati Gram Sarvatra Patra Hoibe Moranam, that Lord Chaitanya says that, yeah, this Sankirtan movement is to be spread to every town and village on the surface of the earth. And actually, as generations went on, including in Bhaktisiddhanta's time, in Prabhupada's time, every town and village, Pritiyati Vite Achayata, Nagarati, Ram, Sarvatra Patra, Hoive Moranam, the name of it actually became interpreted as well, every town and village in India. But like Bhaktivinoda was like, no, it doesn't mean just India. But no, that people obviously mean just India because these are fallen, these are meat eaters and like that. It doesn't mean for them. No, you completely don't get it. Bhaktisiddhanta was like, no, it doesn't mean just India. Srila Prabhupada was, no, it doesn't mean just India. I'll prove it.
To respond to Damayanti's question, I think there is an interesting fact that Bhaktivinoda Thakur books arrived in the West the year of Srila Prabhupada's birth. And for me, I do believe it's very significant.
Yeah. Srila Prabhupada humbly indicates that it's significant. There's a few places where he says that it's like it's an interesting coincidence, sort of thing. Yeah, 1897.
I have a question.
Ramachandra. Yeah.
Occasionally hear the Krishna consciousness is patriarchal. Is that the word?
Patriarchal.
And as an example, they give like the example that all the spiritual masters are men, and it's all male figures, and where are the women? And I was wondering, what would you say as a reaction to that, or what would be your response to that?
Well, we're not concerned about the form of the body. So, yeah, so all the great devotees are men. Well, what about the gopis? So these are the topmost beings in the creation.
Mhm.
Now if I had to say they're women because if people they're like a material, they have a woman's body, so that's a misconception.
Mhm.
But from our conception, okay, we can see, okay, maybe at certain times, first of all, at certain times, maybe those who are like prominent, they're what we would call women. At certain times, those who are prominent are men.
Mhm.
Okay, so the topmost devotees are female.
Mhm. But specifically like with acharyas, there's no like acharya need, or like there are no like female acharyas.
Not true. Maybe there aren't enough to.
On the list. Like that.
No, yeah, but there are female acharyas, and even okay, if we want to get into the esoteric teachings, we were just reading last night. Jiva Goswami is this Manjari, who's a female. Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari, who's a female. I mean, we don't. It's there in Prabhupada's books, and letters, but we don't emphasize that. So, okay, so sometimes these great devotees appear in forms that we would call male, and sometimes they appear in forms that we would call female.
Mm-hmm. So it's just like they're over concerned with the body. They're like just being very external and shallow in their perception of what is Krishna consciousness.
Well, I'm not making accusations, and I'm sharing that I'm sharing my understanding, my realization.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Bhakti George.
Hare Krishna, David. What's coming up for me, I just want to share a comment, is the idea of simple living, high thinking. I'm really appreciating your description of his routine that he had when he came home, and the idea that, he wasn't farming, he wasn't doing so much of things that, at least since I've come into the movement and into practice, he was being like a magistrate. He was applying high thinking at work for Krishna, and then having a simple life at home back and just applying high thinking again. And I just really appreciate his model as an example, as something to kind of fix my mind on. And it's like, why not be a lawyer? Why not be a judge? Why not be, like highly skilled work, and be simple, in terms of, with his practices and how to accomplish that, which is, I appreciate his example. So I just wanted to share that.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I like that. Simple living, high thinking doesn't mean that one needs to be an agriculturalist. So he was dealing with so many complicated legal intricacies, but he was always simply clear intention focused on in his services. It was Bhaktivinoda who said, "Anxieties undertaken in your service I regard to be the source of my greatest ecstasy." And he took on untold anxieties to spread Lord Chaitanya's movement. And yes, yeah, right. So he was focused on giving the world this Vaishnava bhajan. Jayarada Madhava, that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Sri Guru Arti, Jayo Jaya Guru Chandra, that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Hundreds of bhajan. Shara Vijajal Jandra Taikal Jive Pile, that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhajan's about prasadam. This world, the senses, the body is a lump of ignorance, and the senses are a network of paths leading to death. And of the senses, the tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control. I'm inspired to hear your inspiration from Srila Bhaktivinoda. Yes, his example in so many special ways. Yeah, he was purposeful. He knew his purpose. He knew his purpose, whether it's dealing with the pseudo mystic a real mystic who's a pseudo yogi, and whether it's dealing with the British government, writing the books, Harinam Sankirtan, and raising his children. Yeah, he knew his purpose at every moment. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna.
We have a program tonight at 6:30 where we will sing songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.